Good morning, everyone. My name is Stacie McNulty, and I am going to be moderating the Senate candidate panel today. Thank you so much for being here. Hill Harper, Nasser Beydoun, thank you so much for agreeing to participate. We are really thrilled to hear from you. Unfortunately, Congresswoman Slotkin could not declined to attend today. And so we're really excited to have the opportunity to hear from our other candidates. And we expect to have a really productive discussion today. Just to go through quickly the way that format for today's panel. First, we will give the candidates each a 5-minute introduction where they can kind of talk to you about what they'd like to talk about, introduce themselves. After that, we will start with the pre-selected questions. I will ask a question. We will have the candidates respond in alternating order. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. There will be a bell that goes off with 30 seconds left, and then a double bell to tell you that you're finished. Of course, we're going to have a respectful and positive discussion today. And after the pre-selected questions, we will open it up for audience questions. And so that probably will happen around 11:15, 11:30. And so at that time, participants can ask questions directly. We ask that they be directed to both candidates. Great. So with that, Nasser Beydoun, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself? You've got 5 minutes.
Thank you. I don't know what I'm going to do with 5 minutes. My name is Nasser Beydoun. I am a lifelong Michigan resident. My parents immigrated to Michigan in 1969, where we moved to Kalamazoo, Michigan. And we lived there for 6 months, and my dad got a job at Ford Motor Company in Detroit, where he worked there on the assembly line at Wayne Assembly for 30 years. I'm probably the most reluctant candidate out there. I never wanted to be in politics. I'm a small business owner. I'm a husband, a father, a community activist. I've always been involved in my community. But seeing what's happening in America today and seeing the discourse that's happening in Washington and the corruption made me say, decide to come in and jump into this race. Plato said that the price of indifference by good men in public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And I think we're in a position today where Washington does not work for the American people. Washington works for the military-industrial complex, the big pharma, Wall Street, the pro-Israel lobby, but nobody's working for the Main Street, the union laborer. I'm a small business owner. I've been bringing jobs to Michigan for 20 years. I've been active in many social and community organizations, served on the board of a lot of the organizations in Southwest Michigan, Southeast Michigan. I am a candidate that's trying to make a difference. I'm not seeking political office. I'm seeking to make a political difference. I believe that our system is corrupt. The money is corrupting it. In order to take back our government, we have to find a way to get the money out of politics. We have to find a way to end the endless wars that America is funding and supporting overseas. We've spent over $6 trillion between Iraq and Afghanistan on war. And what did we get in return? We're continuing to fund a genocide in Gaza today, where we just allocated $26 billion to Israel to continue bombing an unarmed civilian population. We're sending money to the Ukraine, where there's no military solution to that war. It has to be a diplomatic solution. America's hypocrisy in foreign policy has to change. While we were wasting trillions of dollars on wars, the Chinese have been building their infrastructure. They've been building airports, bridges, dams. They've built 18,000 miles of high-speed rail. Do you know how many miles of high-speed rail the United States has? Zero. When we tell Congress we need, they always have a way to find money for war. But when we tell Congress we need money for affordable health care, we need money for education, we need money for environmental issues, they always say we can't afford it. Yet we're $34 trillion in debt. Between our debt coverage on that debt is $1 trillion a year. Our military budget is $850 billion a year. And that doesn't include the supplemental budgets that we pass. I'm just somebody that's tired. And as an immigrant myself, we have a special affinity to America. It's the country that gave us everything that we have. It gave me everything. It gave my dad a great job, a middle-class existence. And now he's been retired for 20 some years. It gave him a retirement, healthcare with dignity. So I'm running as a person that's going to champion what makes America great. And that's small business, that's union workers, that's dealing with, the education, a good public education, affordable health care. And so, and I just got tired of the same old politics, the same old politicians. This country was never set up for career politicians. It was set up for citizen leaders, where your leadership was temporary, but your citizenship lasts forever. And that's why I chose to run for this office.
Thank you very much. Hill Harper, it's your turn. Please introduce yourself. You've got 5 minutes.
Hey, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Thank you for everyone who's attending. Thank you for this invitation to participate in this forum. My name is Hill Harper. I'm a Democratic candidate for United States Senate, and I am not a career politician. The aforementioned, that Nasser mentioned, I'm not that, but I am a number of things. I'm a cancer survivor. I'm a 32-year union member who was elected to the national board of my union. I'm a small business owner of a business in downtown Detroit for the past 7 years. I am a graduate of both Marine Corps Officer Candidate School and Harvard Law School, as well as the John F. Kennedy School of Government. I hold 10 honorary doctoral degrees. I've written 4 New York Times best-selling books. I was appointed by President Obama in 2011 to the President's Cancer Panel, where we made recommendations to the White House on cancer policy. We also worked with then Vice President Biden's office on his moonshot to cancer. And I truly believe that a number of the really inventive cancer therapies you're seeing, the cellular targeting therapies that we're seeing now, will be funded at that time. And to double click on this and why representation matters and who sits in these seats of influence and power matters, is that as soon as the 45th president was elected, that entire office was completely eliminated. And so when I say this U.S. Senate seat is a matter of life or death, I truly mean that. It will impact people's lives, whether it's from the cancer side of the ball or whether it's from the unhoused population or the untreated mental health conditions of individuals. And so the most important thing that I am, though I left out already, which is he may come through because Pierce is kind of selective about what Zooms he pops in and out on. But I'm a proud single father of a pretty energized 8-year-old, my main man, my son Pierce, and that's why I'm running for office, because as Nasser laid out actually pretty well, our system's broken, and so many people are suffering, and good common sense folks have to step up. Because if we don't step up and really fight and truly fight for people, what we're seeing happen now will continue and get worse. I often talk about this idea of democracy, and we are experiencing a degenerative democracy, meaning our democracy is getting worse and worse and worse, where there was a time, a window of time in this country where it was actually a regenerative or generative democracy, where it was getting better. We were creating amendments that were actually creating more freedoms and more opportunity and actually creating more fairness for larger populations of people. But now there's so many people. I've been to all 83 counties in Michigan. There's so many people across this state who feel they have no voice, no agency, and feel completely underrepresented, particularly in Washington. And the fact is, they are. And we continue to elect the same type of people to office, expecting a different result. My father was a psychiatrist who worked in the prison system, and he's always talked to me about what the definition of insanity was. And he'd say the definition of insanity is continue doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And that's certainly what we're doing in electoral politics today, particularly on a federal level. And I want us to redefine what the U.S. Senate is. You know, when I was in Harvard Law School, my constitutional law professor would hammer home that the Senate is the most important body in all of politics. The Supreme Court rules on the constitutionality of what the Senate passes. The executive branch or the president signs into law or vetoes what the United States Senate passes. The House of Representatives, or our 13 congressional House members in this state, send a bill to the Senate. The Senate can amend it, send it back. They can change it. They can add things to it. They can change the title. So if you're really reductive, 100 people in our country, 100 people in our country sitting at a table decide two incredibly important things. One, lifetime appointments of federal judges, and two, they decide where $7.2 trillion annually goes. And my grandmama used to say, you want to know something about somebody? Take a look at their budget. And we have to make a decision. Do we want to keep sending people to office who take our money, our collective tax dollars, and use them for foreign violence and foreign wars, or for universal health care? Do you want your money to be used to give tax breaks to big oil or to pay for public education? These are simple things that speak to the values that you have and how we want our tax dollars used. And I truly believe we are fighting for the soul of our country and where our dollars get spent. I want our dollars to get spent to create more opportunity, more fairness, and create and give everyone an equal voice in this process that is the tapestry of our country. And we are very, very, very far away from that. And so having discussions like this are so important, but the simple fact is that the folks on this Zoom, I think, are very committed, right? It's almost like the preacher talking to the choir. I think you all are very intelligent, and you do understand that things are fundamentally broken. And you do understand that this U.S. Senate seat here in Michigan is the most important seat in the country in 2024 as far as an election. I think everybody understands that. In fact, it's the first competitive Democratic primary in Michigan in over 24 years. Imagine that. In over 24 years, finally, a competitive Democratic primary in Michigan. And so we have to take this extremely seriously, and we have to look at all of the candidates and see if their values align with the Democratic electorate here in Michigan. And I will say this, I believe that my values, what I will fight for, and what I will do in representing Michigan and Michiganders in Washington align more than any other candidate in this race. And in this process, I hope to earn your vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Now we will move on to the question portion. We will alternate who gets to go first in responding. So since Nasser opened the introductions, Hill, you will begin the first, answer the first question, and you'll have 2 minutes. So the first question is, America has become hyper-polarized. There are deep divisions in our country, there are deep divisions in the state of Michigan, and even within the Democratic Party. All politicians say that they will work across the aisle, and that is not what this question is getting at. What I want to know is, what experiences do you have, what lived experiences what shows us that you're able to communicate with people that aren't in your situation, that might see things a different way, or that do not agree with your political positions?
Well, a couple things. You know, I really like that question because it speaks to a lot of what's been my life. The one thing that you do when you're an actor is you have to learn to walk in someone else's shoes without judging them. You know, any character you play, you want to learn why they made the choices they made, who they are. And you're not judging it because you're trying to figure out whether it's a quote unquote bad guy, good guy, an intellect, whatever. And you develop a level of empathy, to be quite honest. I think you develop that through any type of arts, but particularly in the idea of walking in someone else's shoes. And you use the word divided. To be quite honest, I've been to all 83 counties, and I don't think we're as divided as we are disconnected. You know, I was talking to a farmer outside of Midland who was like, man, I like you. And he's you know, start telling me how he's going to vote for the 45th president. And he said, but man, I vote for you. Because I basically just asked him, I said, what do you care about? What do you want out of your senator? Like, what do you want out of your life? And he said, listen, I want a safe place for my kids to go to school. I want affordable housing. I want a living wage. And I want to be able to take a vacation every once in a while. And I asked a single mom at the corner of Mack and Drexel on the east side of Detroit that same question. She wants a safe place for her kids to go to school. She wants affordable housing and a living wage. She wants healthy food to eat, clean water. We fundamentally all, no matter who we're voting for, want the same things. And I think that if we, particularly as the Democratic Party, have lost the populist argument, and it makes no sense because we're supposed to be a big tent party that brings everybody in. And the fact that we let the opposition speak to folks more plainly and speak to their anger and their frustrations better than we have is something we have to look in the mirror. And I think that's one of my strengths, is connecting with all people, no matter who you are, because I respect you. I want to see the best for you, and I want to create opportunity for you. And that, whether it comes from my lived experience, et cetera. And I'll finish with this. Both my parents are physicians. And my mother was one of the first Black female anesthesiologists in the country. And that has impacted me probably the most, because ultimately we're here to serve. And that means serve everybody. That doesn't mean just serve the people who agree with you, or the people who look like you, or the people who have the same level of melanin in their skin, or the same religion, or this. It means serve everybody. And that's the way I feel.
Thank you. Nasser?
Thank you. You know, I'm more of a pessimist in terms of believing in political parties in this country. I think that they're both equally responsible for the polarization that's happening what's happening in Washington today. The problem we have is that the system has been so rigged. You know, 85% of congressional districts are decided at by the primary, either Democrat or Republican. We've basically set up a rigged system which each party had a role to play with. And I believe that they're both as two sides of the same coin, because they basically, both of them do not represent, you know, you or I. They don't represent small business. They don't represent the farmer. They don't represent the small business owner. They don't represent the teacher. They are in Washington because of just to represent special interest. And the money is what's corrupting that. If you look at what happened, I mean, I was looking at a committee hearing between Green and Cortez. It's just shameful that our legislative body acts in such a way. Nobody is looking, you know, they basically look at legislation as a zero-sum game, where if the Democrats win, the Republicans lose, or vice versa. But nobody is looking at what's the best interest of this country. What's in the best interest of the people? What's in the best interest of Michigan? When legislators have to spend 75 to 80% of their time raising money, and 20% were actually working for the people that elected them to do the job, who do you think they're going to represent? The 80% that pay them or raise the money for them, or the 20% that elected them? And once they get into office, they've rigged the system in such a way that it's virtually impossible for anybody else to make it, and they can stay there as long as they want. And then when there is an open seat like the one we have here in Michigan, the establishment, the national establishment, decides they want to anoint a candidate. So, Hill and I, we are, have to fight and claw, and we can't match the juggernaut of money that's going into Elisa Slotkin's campaign. But makes us better candidates because we actually have to go to the voters. We have to meet the people. We have to try to convince them that the money is not, you should not choose her because she has money. You should choose us because we are representative of the people and will work for you. I have not taken a dime from special interests. I have not taken a dime from corporate PACs, and I refuse to do so. We need to make sure that regardless of the party, we start electing people who are going to represent the people. And it goes down to the root cause of what's happening in our politics today and the corruption. It's the money in politics. We have to find a way to get the money out of politics. Other than that, we have the most corrupt political process in the world. The only difference between us and the third world is we call our corruption campaign finance laws. And until we as Americans come together, because the politicians in Washington aren't going to do it, I think that everybody running for office should sign a pledge that the first thing they're going to do is create a bill or a way to make sure that candidates, we level the playing field in terms of money. We get the big donors out of politics, the billionaires and the millionaires and the corporate donors, so that we make sure that Americans can actually choose a representative that's going to represent them and not have to choose somebody that's being chosen for them.
Thank you very much. The next question is, our public school system operates as an investment in our children and our future and plays a significant role in building equity in our communities. Both locally and nationwide, K-12 public school districts are running into significant budget cliffs as COVID emergency funding ends. Reports estimate that Michigan could lose up to 5,100 teacher positions as a result. What action should be taken at a federal and state levels to ensure that our public schools have the resources that they need?
Who's going first, me or
Sorry, Nasser, it's your turn. Yes. Sorry.
Okay. I just didn't want to speak out of turn at school. The $90 billion that we just passed for war, if we had used that domestically, we could have hired 115,000 teachers in the United States. Public education is the most, is the root of a good democracy. I find it sad that a busboy at one of my restaurants makes more than an entry-level teacher starting today. We need to reset our priorities. We need to make sure that our teachers are well paid. At one time, I had a sixth grade teacher. His name was Mr. Weatherspoon. Mr. Weatherspoon, all he did was he taught. He was a teacher, an elementary school teacher. He lived a nice lifestyle. He had a cabin up north. He had a house in Dearborn. And then he retired with a great pension, good health care. If we want good teachers, we have to pay for it. And I think that what we need to do as a nation is to focus on educating our children. And parents have to get back. Parents right now want to blame teachers for everything that's wrong with their kids. But I guarantee you that a lot of these teachers are hard. I see it from my kids' teachers. They're hardworking. They're there after school. They're supporting them. They're bringing in their own supplies. Why is it we can spend the money on the war, but we can't spend to make sure we have the best schools, we have the best teachers, we have the best training for them, and let the teachers teach the kids? So, if we don't have a strong public education system in this country, the world is passing us by, and it is starting to pass us by right now because we're focused on stupid things in schools instead of focusing on the basic necessities: math, science, English, and other language, and culture and government.
Thank you. Hill?
Education is something I think about every day, all the time. My son is in 2nd grade, and the one thing I make sure that I do every morning is drive him to school, and because it gives us a time to talk and do some affirmations and hopefully prepare him for a good day where he doesn't get sent home, which he doesn't like to sit down, so sometimes he does. But we underfund education to the tune of $4 billion here in Michigan, every $4 billion a year. And for me in my life, public education is my bedrock. Everything that I have, I owe to quality public education. When I was told people when I was at my high school that I was going to go to Harvard, and when I went to Brown, people said, you're not going to be able to compete with the kids from Cranbrook or Country Day or Andover or Choate or wherever. But not only did I go to Brown and compete, I graduated as the valedictorian of my department. So it wasn't about, I actually outperformed those folks that went to some of those really expensive private schools. Why? Because I had a public education that prepared me to compete, and we're not preparing our kids. And so I created a vertical in our campaign of educators, administrators to give real advice. And in fact, I was speaking in front of the Detroit Federation of Teachers recently as well. This is what came back, because I really wanted to understand, why is it in many of our communities, 91% of the kids are 3 to 4 grades below in reading and writing? And it came back very clear. It said, listen, Hill, we have to pass kids along because we get threatened with funding being taken away if we don't pass a certain number of kids along. And it just shows you it's completely backwards. Communities and places where the kids need, that's a quick 2 minutes, wow.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay. Oh, that's a 30-second bill. Okay. Communities where folks need the most help, they need more resources, not less. And we see this replicated all over the place. The other thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about, is that we're saddling our young people with trauma. My son has to deal with active shooter training drills instead of dealing with the NRA and the gun lobby and fixing our schools and creating real safety in our schools.
Thank you. Right. The next question kind of piggybacks off of the prior question. In areas of segregated generational poverty, particularly post-COVID, reading scores are very low, below 10% reading on grade level in some of these schools. What do you see as being the impacts of this crisis? And what policies would you fight to have put in place to address this crisis? Hill, you have 2 minutes.
Sure.
A bell will ring at 30 seconds and then a double bell at 2 minutes.
Okay.
It's for everyone.
So it goes back to what, I think that was said originally. I mean, you can judge a society, you can judge a people, you can judge a person based off how they allocate their resources. And there is no question that we are grossly under allocating resources, and it's systemic. It isn't just, this isn't just isolated and local. And then let's also talk this, Friday, May 17th was the 70-year anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, the landmark ruling that desegregated our schools. Yet today in 2024, we have abject de facto segregation. My son, a little black boy, either would go to a school that's 99% black or 99% white, depending on where he lives or what school he goes to. It's horrendous, horrendous. And if we don't look at education and decide that we're going to equip our kids with the ability to learn, and we scaffold around them, the thing is that we know what it is. And we know how to teach kids, but do we have the political will to actually pay teachers more? Do we have the political will to actually improve the quality of where one of the biggest things that came back from my vertical when folks were saying we keep putting double pane windows up in these old relic dark schools, we act like that's actually fixing a problem. No, when's the last time you've seen a brand new, beautiful glass, wide open school built in lower income neighborhoods? When's the last time? And not just replacing the windows. No, they said nobody wants to teach in these dark brick hallways that feel like prisons, and kids don't learn in them either. Yet we don't invest in our kids, and I'm going to fight for our kids. And that's why being a parent of a young child is important, because if I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, listen to this, I'd be only one of 2 members of the U.S. Senate with an elementary age child.
Thank you.
Okay, I didn't hear the first bell, but it's almost like a school bell, but it's good. We should keep doing it. I'm learning the bells.
Nasser?
I am the product of a public education. I grew up in Dearborn Public Schools. It is so important, especially in areas of poverty, that the government invests in making sure that these kids have a great education. It just changed, but the problem we have, especially in segregated communities and in the Black community, is I am one of those candidates that actually believes that the Black community in the United States is owed reparations. They are owed, and when I say reparations, I don't mean like handing out checks, but I mean that we have to make sure that the schools in their neighborhoods are the best, that they're the best funded, they're the best infrastructure in place. One of the things that I find ironic is, Michigan has a lottery system, and that lottery system has to, is supposed to go to fund schools. But we don't fund the schools in a way that's fair, because most of the money that goes into that lottery systems comes from poor neighborhoods. Yet they spread the money evenly across all the school districts. We have, the way we fund schools in Michigan is atrocious. Basically, the way we fund them has to change. Is that a 2-bell or 1-bell? It's 2-bell.
That's the one.
Okay. We have to change the way we fund it. Let's get it off the property tax and find a way that we can make sure all schools are funded equally, and those that need special attentions can afford it. Because right now, the way the budgets work is they can only pay for the teachers and the administrators. They don't have the money for infrastructure.
Thank you. Okay. The next question, Nasser, you'll begin responses. What policies should the national government adopt to protect our natural resources and fight climate change?
That's an easy one. I have a motto that there used to be a taco shop in California when I lived there in Rubio's, and on their cups they would have an old Indian saying, American Indian saying, that says, "We don't inherit this world from our parents. We borrow it from our children." And that has always stuck with me. So, these people that deny climate change or don't want to try and, and the dependence on fossil fuel and go to a more green future. I just don't understand it. What are you losing if we eliminate fossil fuels from our world? What are you losing if we make sure that we keep open space and forests from being deforested? We have to work to make sure that what we leave our children is better than what we found from our parents. And the PFAS and the pollution and the everything that we are feeding our kids today is affecting the future generation. We need to not only make sure that we live in a clean environment, but we eat clean food. And we also have to make sure that we treat the environment in a way that's going to be left in a pristine condition for our children.
Thank you. Hill?
Climate is one of the main issues, certainly in my campaign, because it speaks to, I think, what we have to think about as Democrats and stop sticking our toe in the issue, but actually drawing a hard line. It seems that the opposition is able to draw these hard lines, but we don't. And so that's why I've called for shutting down Line 5, not just encapsulating Line 5. We have to protect our Great Lakes at all costs. And the fact that we're equivocating on this issue when, number one, Canada gets the main benefit from Line 5, and number two, Enbridge poisoned the Kalamazoo River in 2010. Line 5 has already had 31 breaches along its lines, and it's past its expiration date. Why as Democrats are we allowing the conversation to even go on? It goes back to a point that's been made a number of times already, is that Enbridge writes a lot of big checks to a lot of politicians. And that's why. But there's no question we have to shut down Line 5. We have to stop the expansion of Camp Grayling, one of the top PFAS producers and poisoners of our groundwater in the state. Yet the Department of Defense, military, and military hawk politicians are advocating for its expansion into the hunting preserve that surrounds it. We have to stop that. When we think about climate, it comes back to, are we going to protect our environment, clean water, clean air, protect it for the future, and actually create union jobs that are clean energy jobs and invest in a way that makes real sense? Or are we going to allow big oil and polluters to buy off our politicians and keep electing the same type of politicians to office who don't defend? Our opponent in this race that is not here voted for continued nuclear weapons testing. Not only is that outrageously horrible for the environment, but it's also bad spend of taxpayer dollars. Is that the type of person you want representing your interest that's going to make that vote? It's also going to advocate for Camp Grayling expansion. These are questions we have to ask ourselves. Is that the values of the Democratic Party or not?
Thank you. The next question is, and Hill, you will have the first response on this one. By 2020, firearm deaths surpassed car crashes to become the leading cause of death among children. What national level policies do you propose to reduce gun violence and mass shootings?
First of all, if we end Citizens United and end the power that the NRA and the gun lobby have over our politicians, this would have been finished before. The fact that my son told me last year that he didn't want to go to school one day because he was afraid to get shot. He was afraid because they're doing those active shooter training drills, not because there was some imminent threat there that someone's going to come into his school. Yet we are impacting the mental health of our kids rather than taking on the NRA and the gun lobby. It's outrageous. It is outrageous. And a young child, 2 a.m. last week in Flint, was killed. 2-3 weeks ago in Grand Rapids, another child killed. When are we going to say, here's the deal. NRA, gun lobby, you're not going to control legislation. We're going to ban weapons of mass murder, and we're going to do active, aggressive gun buyback programs. We're going to require locks in homes and locking up of weapons, and we're going to have background checks and waiting periods. Other countries have done it. It works. Yet we can't find the political will because our politicians are bought. I won't be bought. I won't be bossed. I won't be bullied. And we have to solve this. There's no question. Your question even said it. When the leading cause of death of children was car accidents, we were extremely aggressive in even mandating the type and style of protection that the kids had to have. And we won't do this for guns and weapons. What are we doing? And why do we keep electing the same people who just think red flag laws are enough? They are not enough.
Thank you. Nasser?
Well, it's pretty interesting that mass shootings at schools is basically an American phenomenon. I mean, you don't even see that happening in places, war-torn countries across the world where guns are prevalent. I think that we have to address the issue of guns as holistic. Michigan is a big hunting state, so guns are important culture. But the inability to, because of the corrupt Congress being bought and paid for by the gun lobby, to do some simple things, have a database and a waiting period to buy a gun. The other thing is we need to change the gun liability laws, where we make the gun companies liable for what's happening. If somebody uses their product, for destruction, that would get them to make sure that they know exactly who's buying their gun. And the most important thing, I think, as a society, as a country, we have to look at mental health in this country. For somebody 16-year-old or 17-year-old to walk into a school and shoot up kids, there's something wrong with their mental health. And we have to make sure that parents, like we did in Michigan, are held responsible for the actions of their children. It's not a difficult process, but we have to make sure we provide the resources and have the political will to address the issue. And that's something that this Congress or any future Congress will not have as long as they continue to be corrupt and influenced by who pays them the most.
Thank you.
You didn't have to even ring the bell.
All right. The next question, Nasser, you'll begin. Do you support Medicare for all? And if so, how do you propose that the costs the federal government would incur be covered?
I prefer either Medicaid for all or some kind of an affordable universal healthcare product for Americans. How do we pay for it? We're already paying for it. I mean, if you look at the insurance rates that we pay, I pay $1,800 a month for my healthcare as a small business owner. And then on top of that, I have to cover a $9,000 deductible before I can actually use the healthcare. And my son just went into the emergency room the other day with a kidney stone, and they just sent me a bill for $6,000 that I cover because I haven't reached my deductible yet. We have one of the worst healthcare systems in the world. When we put profit into healthcare, the whole thing went to pot. We have to take the profit out of healthcare. And we can't do that as long as we allow money into politics, because big pharma controls the show. When they won't allow the federal government to negotiate healthcare prices across the board. They pick and choose which items they can. And when companies that For instance, I'll give you a case. Ozempic is very popular these days. It costs $1,000 a dose for a monthly dose. It costs 11 cents to make it. So we have to basically make sure that healthcare is affordable, and there has to be a system. We're the only country in the world where you go bankrupt if you get sick. And the majority of bankruptcies in America are because of medical bills. Our system is broken.
Thank you. Hill?
Yes, I do support Medicare for all. I support universal health care. My mother, both my parents are physicians. My father was in mental health. My mother was a professor and an anesthesiologist. And when she started her medical practice, medicine was nonprofit. And she lives here, and we were riding the other day, and she kept talking to me about the profit motive in healthcare that we actually have. We don't have a healthcare system. We have a sick care system. The actual profit motive wants to keep people on meds because that's the profit motive there. We wants to do treatments. We have to. And you asked, how do you pay for it? You pay for it by reversing the incentive. If you create the incentive for actual health, and fewer treatments will follow. Why? Because there'll be much more. I promise you, if we reverse the incentive, you'll start getting vitamins in the mail. Vitamin D3 and K2. Be like, wow, they want me to eat healthy. They're teaching me how. They're sending me vitamins, because we have to get out of our sick care system and actually have a true healthcare system. And so, what does that mean? Nasser's absolutely right. Big Pharma spent $375 million on elections in 2022. You drive 12 miles from where I'm sitting right now across the Ambassador Bridge. It's less than 12 miles, 12 minutes across the bridge, and you'll pay 13x less for a vial of insulin. There is no question. 1/3 of all GoFundMes are medical related. GoFundMe is not a health plan. It's the number one cause, catastrophic medicals, the number one cause of personal bankruptcies. Our so-called healthcare system is completely broken, and our medical professionals know it and talk about it and have the solutions. Yet again, it goes back to the ability of big dollar special interests controlling policy and controlling politicians. When I said at the beginning of this that who sits in this seat is a matter of life or death, it truly is. Our opponent in this race, who is not here, would not co-sponsor Medicare for all in the 117th or 118th Congresses.
Thank you. As a follow-up to this question, and Hill, you can begin. Do you believe that increasing privatization of Medicare through so-called advantage plans is a good idea?
What we have to do is what I alluded to just a second ago. And that is, you take a step back and you say, what incentives do we have? And what incentives are being created by any plan? Whether you want an advantage plan or any other plan, and whether people want to use the term Medicare for all, or they want to use the term universal health care. In my opinion, it has to include fully encompassing the entire health of an individual. So universal health care plus mental health care plus vision plus dental. And if you start doing that and you're incentivizing care providers with the financial incentive that the fewer people you treat and the more successful you are with these treatments, keeping people off of meds, fewer procedures, having lower blood pressure, less heart disease, all of a sudden you'll see results that, one, benefit communities and benefit society and benefit people, and two, lower cost of this catastrophic cost center for so many people. Somebody on my staff was talking about the cost of their healthcare and how even their insurance plus what Nasser just referred to, the deductible, is crushing them financially. And you got to remember that people's budgets as individuals have to go to so many things. Working class and middle class families are getting punched in the teeth today. They feel like they don't They make too much to qualify for the earned income tax credit, and they don't make enough to have multiple LLCs and offshore accounts. And so they feel like they're literally supporting the U.S. economy, in which many ways they are, and they don't feel represented.
Thank you. Nasser?
I think, our whole system is broken. They poison us with the food they feed us. It works the whole spectrum. They poison us because of lobbyists and special interests and corporate interests. They poison us with the food they feed us, and they poison us with the drugs they give us. So, we have a society that's obese, that's diabetic, that's high blood pressure. When was the last time you heard of a drug company curing somebody? They only want to maintain you, because if they cure you, they don't make money off of it. And if they kill you, they don't make money off of it. So they cure you. They maintain you. You go to the doctor today. I'm 59 years old. I go to the, I'm in pretty good shape. My doctor, first thing he tells me, oh, your cholesterol's a little high. You need to be on Lipitor, and then, or some kind of statin, or your blood pressure is a little, we need to put you on this medicine. So they put you on these medicines. And to show you how toxic and ridiculous it is, look at your television every night. What is the #1 commercials you see on TV? Pharmaceutical companies pushing their drugs, and then they tell you, then they give you the disclaimer. Oh, this could kill you. This could make your hair fall off. This could cause you. But it just doesn't make sense. We need to have a healthcare system that's affordable. That's, right now our healthcare system serves the rich. It doesn't serve the average American. And if you go into a hospital and if you don't have an advocate with you, you're not leaving that hospital. I know with my father, every time I go to take him to the hospital, if we're not there with him, watching everything they do, they're going to make mistakes because they don't care.
Thank you. The next question, Nasser, you'll have the first opportunity to respond. Do you support providing further military aid to Ukraine, and at current or perhaps increased levels?
I do not. I am opposed to providing money for war, and I am actually an advocate for basically reducing our military budget. The reason, it's not that I don't support the Ukrainian people. I do support, to make sure, but there is no military solution to that country, to that war. And then you also have to look at the history. Basically, this war is a result of our foreign policy failures. When we decided to move NATO and put it on Russia's border, what do you think the Russians were going to do? Would we allow the Russians to put a military alliance in Mexico or in Canada? What would we do? We have to end the hypocrisy in our foreign policy. We have to end the militarization of our foreign policy. We basically have become the USSR of the 50s and 60s around the world. We're the country that people fear. At one time, we were the country that people looked up to, they admired, they wanted to emulate. But today, we are a country that basically uses our military to expand, force countries to do what we want them to do. Ukraine should have never happened. There should have never been a war. We should have not tried to put NATO on Russia's border. One thing we know about the Russians, and we saw it in World War II, they will defend their homeland as we would defend our home. So we need to find a diplomatic solution to the problem in the Ukraine.
Thank you.
Or Stacie, is that bell?
Part of what true leadership is being able to see what potentially is coming and in that regard, I support aid for Ukraine because Russia's made it quite clear that they're not going to stop. And one of my biggest objectives is to be a good fiduciary of people's tax-paying dollars. And when we think about this, the incredible expense that will come if there's a continued push, Poland, etc., we have to stop this now. And if we don't stop it now, it's going to get significantly worse, significantly more expensive, and ultimately, I believe, risk American lives, which at this point aren't at risk. And so the answer is yes, although I don't like that answer because I am in support of, I do not support rubber stamping the NDAA and the National Defense Authorization Act, which we've seen in the continued expansion of our military industrial complex. Mark Pocan and Barbara Lee put forth a bill called People Over the Pentagon, which was a $100 billion reduction. I would have supported that bill. The person who's not with us today did not support that bill. I don't support military expansion and the continued cost and taxpayer dollars running into our military unfettered, because what it really is running to our big defense contractors, the Raytheons, the Lockheed Martins, the Boeings, and we can go on and on and on. Those are the individuals and those are the companies that benefit from the rubber stamping of the NDAA. But I put Ukraine in a different category because some things you have to spend on to keep from having to spend something far greater later on.
Thank you. The next question, Hill, you'll have the first response. Do you support providing further military aid to Israel at the current or perhaps increased levels? And if so, under what conditions? What actions should the U.S. take to pressure Israel to reduce civilian Palestinian casualties?
I called for ceasefire in November, early November, and I do not support continued aid for what is happening there. It is, my heart breaks. I was saying, I say there's no good war, there's no bad peace. And for us to just see what's happening, the humanitarian crisis. I had an opportunity in 2010, I was sent by the State Department to a trip to the West Bank, Palestine, as well as Israel to work with young artists. So I went into Bethlehem, worked with young artists, young Palestinian artists. I worked with young artists in Tel Aviv and in Jerusalem on this mission. And the young people I worked with there on both sides wanted peace. Yet it's clear that the military leaders, it's clear that the politicians, it's clear that organizations have different objectives where they do not put the people first. Palestinian people are an amazing people. And the fact that we've allowed what's happened there to continue to happen and not call it to the mat and still see what's happened as an example, the restriction of the actual discourse about this issue. As soon as I called for ceasefire, my accounts were 98% shadow banned on Facebook, Instagram, etc. We have to understand that you have to speak the truth. And we cannot support in any way what's happened. And certainly the hostages should be released. And certainly I don't support terrorist organizations, but I also don't support the killing of women and children, civilians. And I don't support my tax dollars going towards that.
Thank you. Nasser?
How we've been talking about the discourse in Washington and that they can't agree on anything. There is one thing that Republicans and Democrats do agree on, and that is funding Israel. That is the only bipartisan issue that Congress is willing to take up today. I'd say before we end the occupation in Palestine, we need to end the occupation of Congress. And we need to make sure that we end Apex and the pro-Israel lobby's domination of our legislative process. President Biden could have stopped this war from day one. He chose not to. And what we see today is a genocide that's happening in front of our eyes. And when you have congressmen and senators, one of them threatening, telling them to drop a nuclear bomb on an unarmed civilian population, or Congress gets its hair in a frenzy because Joe Biden threatened to stop one shipment of the hundreds of shipments of 2,000-pound bombs that Israel's been using to destroy Gaza. You know that we have lost our moral humanity and our moral standing in the world. Anybody, and then when we sit there and try and shut down students because they oppose the genocide on American universities, you know that this country is going in the wrong direction. And what's worse than that, Congress just passed legislation to make anti-Semitism, the definition of anti-Semitism to include anti-Zionism. So basically what that means is that in America today, you would be able to say F Joe Biden, but you can't say F Benjamin Netanyahu. They are attacking our First Amendment rights of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, just because they want to continue the genocide.
Thank you. The next question, Nasser, you'll have the first response. The latest studies show that the racial gap in incarceration is narrowing, but that low-level street violence in our urban areas as the result of systemic racism and poverty is the current major driver of ongoing disparities. Could you comment on causes and solutions?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things, we have to relook at our mandatory sentencing, federal sentencing guidelines and give judges more leeway in how they sentence prisoners. Second of all, we have to fund mental health in this country because a lot of these prisoners, the reason they end up where they are is because of mental health. We have to have a better rehabilitation system when people do go to prison. It's funny that, and we have to end private prisons in this country. We have to take the profit out of prisons. It's just ridiculous that, that basically when you have a profit motive, like Hill said, in healthcare or in prisons, you want to send more people to prison. And the other thing, we have to look at our drug laws. I find that I've been doing business in the city of Detroit for over 25 years. And I remember a lot of these, kids that would sell marijuana and things of that in the city of Detroit that would end up in jail. And now that they've legalized marijuana, these kids that were entrepreneurial aren't benefiting from it. It's white suburban kids and corporations that are benefiting from the legalization of marijuana. So we got to make sure that everybody that was put in jail or is in jail because of, like marijuana or something that's nonviolent has a way to get out of there and has a way to get their record expunged. Our criminal justice system needs to be looked at, and a holistic approach, how we handle things needs to be done. And I think the most important thing is mental health. We have to fix mental health. We have to look at our drug laws in this country. And, it's funny that the people that commit the major crimes don't go to jail. The people who caused the 2008 financial crash, nobody went to jail. The opioid crisis, nobody went to jail. but these young kids who are selling a dime bag or a joint always end up in jail. So I think we need to really look at a blind justice system.
Thank you. Hill?
You know, my father pioneered a conditional release program that was to allow so-called nonviolent drug offenders to get released conditionally and work with them. And that had an impact on my life, so much so that my last book that I wrote is called Letters to an Incarcerated Brother. We are only 5% of the world's population, but we hold 25% of the world's incarcerated people. Our mass incarceration crisis is real. It's baked out from a number of things, certainly systemic and economic and communities. We are locking up poor people, period. That's who we lock up. That's the one thing folks have in common. And it has to stop. The layering on of charges, the prosecutorial layering on of charges is off the charts. When I was at Harvard Law School, I worked with the Legal Aid Bureau where we fought against prosecutors and we supported public defenders. You know, Nasser actually made this point about the fact that when we don't have a pathway currently to federal expungements, and it absolutely has to exist. We have that in the state of Michigan. We don't have a pathway. And let's double click on this. Now, in 2018, we legalized marijuana here, and I call it locked up and locked out. But the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act came up federally. Our opponent that's not here would not co-sponsor that bill. And it was an opportunity to have expungements in the area of marijuana and also decriminalize it. But we've seen our president and our vice president move on this issue and to recategorize marijuana out of the category 1, which they have it categorized currently federally, same level as heroin. And so we have to talk about what are our democratic values and who are we electing, and are those people representing the true democratic values of this state? The state has already spoken about marijuana, so you would think that a representative representing the state would actually vote in the way the people of the state already spoke about it. But in this case, our opponent in this race did not co-sponsor the Marijuana Reinvestment and Expungement Act, and I think that's shameful. I don't see how you do that.
Thank you. The next question, Hill, you'll have the first response. Lack of affordable housing is a national problem, as well as a crisis across Michigan. What policies and solutions would you advocate for?
So last weekend, I was invited by a group of men who are doing outreach saying, Hill, you have to see this. And, you know, you can go to my social media and you'll see the live pictures of it, but walk into this house or apartment complex on the east side of Detroit, and the walls were covered in black mold. And we got a bleach out. We started bleaching the walls, talking to a mother of 4. Kids are sleeping on stuffed animals that are just like my son has. But I say, why is that? I say, well, we don't have a mattress, so we got to sleep on this teddy bears and stuffed animals. And we have a housing crisis, again, where folks in communities that are getting the worst education, experiencing food desert situations in their communities, and have some of the highest level of criminality and violent crime, and at the same time have abjectly horrific living conditions, to the extent that we took the broken door off, we threw it out the second floor window. By the 6 minutes later, by the time we came outside, someone was running across the street with that broken door. We called that person back. His name was Tristan, 23-year-old drug addict. And he thought he got caught taking it. We said, why do you want this broken door? He says, I don't even have a door. And we're like, how many people live across the street? He's like, 20-some people. You know, we have to understand, Tristan does not have any access to methadone or any kind of drug or mental health treatment, has abjectly horrific housing. We have to federally fund and support our unhoused population and support affordable housing. We have to undergird affordable housing, which we are not doing. Tearing down housing and just clearing lots is not a housing solution. Yet When I talk to the folks who actually do affordable housing, they say the system's broken, Hill. We get a tax credit that we have to sell on the open market for 80 cents on the dollar. If we had direct investment, we could build 3 times the amount of units. And so again, it just goes back to having a broken system with bad incentives, but the people who get punched in the face are the poorest folks in our country.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Nasser. Go ahead.
The first thing I would do as a senator is I would introduce a bill that basically bans large Wall Street hedge funds like BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard from buying single-family homes. Currently, these hedge funds are the largest owners of single-family homes in the United States. What their plan is to do is to, Americans' wealth comes in equity in their home, and home ownership is a basic bedrock of the American promise. These companies are trying to turn our country from an owner society to a renter society, where they would realize the appreciation, the equity in the homes, and force Americans to rent from them. Nobody's talking about it, but this is something that, if allowed to go unchecked, would be detrimental to middle-class America. The other thing is we need to address the homelessness issue in the country. And if most of these homeless are vets, they are kids that we have sent overseas to war, and they come back with mental issues. We can spend trillions of dollars on weapons systems, yet we fail to take care of those kids that we send overseas, our soldiers, when they come home, make sure that they're able to come back into society and make sure that they don't end up homeless on the street. And we need to reassess how we fund low-income housing in this country. I know my bell's gonna ring, so I'm not gonna.
Thank you. The next question, Nasser, you'll have the first response. What role should the U.S. government play in promoting domestic production of semiconductors and perhaps other key manufactured products?
I think that as a nation, we have to make sure that we maintain our industrial base. And, people think that, oh, wow, look at America, it's a great military power. Yeah, but we became a military power because we were an industrial power. Today, China is the industrial power. So in a generation or two, they are going to become the dominant military power in the world. We have to make sure that we maintain a manufacturing base. In today's economy, with the reliance of computers and AI coming up, semiconductors are a national security necessity for America. One of the things we did, in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, is we shipped all our factories over to China to take over, and now the Chinese are beating us at our own game. And eventually, Taiwan, that produces the majority of semiconductors, that country is technically part of China. So what happens if the Chinese decide they want to take it back? We have to make sure that we have a domestic semiconductor base, because the world's future is based on computers, and we need to be able to build them here in the United States. Simple as that.
Thank you.
We absolutely need a domestic semiconductor base and investment in that manufacturing and infrastructure. I mean, it just doesn't stop there. It goes to clean energy, EVs. It goes to big manufacturing. It goes to infrastructure. It goes to railways, road transportation, mobility. Our state has always been a leader in mobility. I was able to meet with a number of business leaders. The Southeast Michigan Chamber of Commerce endorsed my campaign and was able to meet with a number of business leaders in Macomb County who are manufacturing leads. And they talk just about, listen, we, with proper federal investment as well as protection, we can grow great jobs, union jobs here in Michigan. Yet many of them feel that they're having to compete in an unfair playing field against China, even on their home turf. And so, we can't have that. If we're going to get people, unfortunately, we are 49th out of 50th in growth in the country, in Michigan. We have to get more people here. We got to get our best and brightest coming out of our wonderful colleges and universities to stay home. And how do we do that? We create a top quality tech-based infrastructure and jobs, and we have to invest in that. It doesn't just happen. And so we already have the leadership here, and we have the history of innovation, and we have so many great graduates coming out of school. What we don't have is the investment or the folks that represent us fighting for that piece. When I first talked about this in my opening statement, I said that there are 100 people that decide where $7.2 trillion goes. We need to send someone to Washington who is going to fight for us, not someone who's going to sign NDAs with Chinese-backed companies like Goshen. And so that's the question you have to ask when you talk about who you're going to send to Washington.
Thank you. Right. The next question, Hill, you'll have the first response. It has been said that apathy is the enemy of democracy. Young voters are crucial in this upcoming election. How can we engage with and empower young voters?
Our campaign is built off of a movement of young people and young voters. So I'm very proud of that. And I think a lot of the momentum that we're experiencing with our campaign right now is from young voters and their energy. And people want to throw around the term voter apathy, but what I've realized is that voters aren't apathetic. They look to see if they've gotten a return on the investment of their vote. And when we go to communities, whether it's young people, Black folks, whether it's the Arab and Muslim community, whether it's the immigrant community, whether it's white folks and moms, wherever, and you ask for someone's vote and they don't get anything in return, they say, why vote? We sold people hope and change, nothing changed. Then they got sold Make America Great Again, and America got worse. And so they're like, why should I even participate in this? And so we have to meet people where they are and talk to them. That's it. Look them in the eye and say, what do you care about? Ask them questions and then say, you're a part of this. The biggest response that I got from a lot of young people, and that's why I have young people who have their own budget in my campaign, is because they said, listen, we get invited to sit at the table. Sometimes we get to say whatever, but we don't have title and we don't have budget. In other words, we don't control the money and we don't have a title that's level to have real influence. And I wanted to give young people in my campaign both of those things. And I want to do that in my Senate office. We have to, it's not just about lip service saying include young people. It's about, no, we're going to give you the ability to actually make decisions and the resources to effectuate change with those decisions you make. And so that's the best way to respect the voice of young people and meeting them where they are. And so that's what our campaign's been doing. I couldn't be more proud of the young volunteers. I mean, we have them in our campaign office today. A lot of young people making phone calls, knocking doors and canvassing. And that's what democracy looks like to me.
Thank you. Nasser?
I think the best way to make sure that young people are interested in our democracy is to make sure that we don't have police beating them or arresting them or denying them graduation from university because they take a position to stand up against genocide. I think the young people today are standing on the right side of history, and it's us who are on the wrong side. People need to see that politics in this country works, that their vote matters, that their representative who they work for or they choose to elect is truly going to represent them. And unfortunately, in America today, we don't have that. So in order to get, when I go around and talk to people, regardless, the message, they want to know that their politician, that person that they're talking to is genuine. He's telling them what he truly feels and not what he thinks or she thinks they want to hear. And that's, I think, what a lot of politicians do today. They go by the polls, and whatever the polls say is that's what they stand with. We need politicians who are going to stand with conviction, that are going to stand on principle, and that are going to work for what's best for this country. Not what's best for them or their party, but what's best for their country and their constituents. And I think if we create a system like that and we have people who are elected like that, you'll see the young people engaged and stand with them when they want to demonstrate on university campuses.
Thank you so much. That concludes the prepared questions. I just want to thank both candidates for being here, giving us their thoughtful and honest answers. We really appreciate it. Now we're going to take some questions from the participants and audience. So what I would ask is that anyone here who has a question they'd like to ask directly to raise their hand, and I will call on you in order. Just remember that we'd like the questions to go to both candidates so that they can both answer them.
Well, I guess we did such a good job. Nobody has a question.
I know, right? It looks like it. Oh, okay. Rayanne?
Yes, thank you. I'm the bell person, and sorry, I kind of got distracted a couple times. My cat was chasing a mouse, and so anyway, I did the best I can. I would like to know what your positions are on reproductive health for women, particularly abortion, IVF, that whole package. Thank you.
I'll start. My mother, as I've said many times, is a physician, and we talk about this all the time. There's no question that we have to federally codify women's reproductive health, women's reproductive freedom, and get that done. When a few years ago, I was being interviewed by Larry King, may God rest his soul, and he asked me, it was during the 45th president's presidency, and he asked me to rate the president, and I said in that interview at the time, I said, the appointment of federal judges is such a critical issue, and I think that's going to be the legacy of this president. And I said, and I think Roe v. Wade may be, in jeopardy, and I'm so sorry that I was right. We have to make sure that we make it eminently clear that a bunch of white men should not be legislating to women what they can or cannot do with their bodies, and our government shouldn't be overreaching into the sanctified relationship of a healthcare professional and their patient. And my mother and I talk about it, and and it lets me even say I'm not a doctor, but I played one on TV, and so I can attest the fact that I'm going to fight for my sisters, for women, for my mother. The fact that my mother, at 86 years old, has in her lifetime more rights than my niece in her 20s is wrong and ridiculous, and we cannot stand by and allow that to continue. This has been a common refrain, I think, in this conversation, that we all can see we're headed in the wrong direction, and we have to right the ship, and we have to fight to do that.
Thank you. Nasser?
Yeah, I just can't believe that in this nation that women's reproductive rights is a legislative issue. I mean, it's a medical issue. It's an issue between that woman, within herself and her family, her husband, her partner. So, government should have no role in this. A woman should have absolute control of her body. It's just simple as that.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who has any questions?
Teresa.
Yeah, I didn't have a question. I just wanted to compliment Stacie on her amazing work. Just wonderful work and your wonderful questions. And also Hill and Nasser, both, thank you so much for being here. It's been incredibly informative and perhaps more informative than it would have been had the third person participated. So thank you so much for your time. That's all I have to say. And I see Sharon has a question.
Yeah, Hill and I would have just been beating up on her if she was here, but
Yes, thank you. This has been a terrific forum. I want to ask what steps you take to address climate change and what sort of policies and bills that you would advocate for.
well, first of all, I would end the oil subsidies. That's the easiest way to do it. Make sure that we're not spending tax dollars funding the oil industry like we do today. Second of all, I would make sure that we go after polluters. When 3M made PFABs, they knew what they would do. Yet they still made them and continue to make them because it was profitable for them. Companies have to be responsible for their actions. And it shouldn't wait 20, 30, 50 years down the line before they introduce a product that they're held responsible. And the other thing is the best way we can help climate change and protect our environment is to make sure that we have an EPA that's not basically beholden to the corporate interests and the corrupt government that we have today. EPA that actually is going to work to protect you and me from companies that they're supposed to be regulating. But they're too cozy in their relationship. It's very incestuous the way our regulatory system works today in America. So I believe that, we need to invest, and by reducing our military budget, investing it here in America, we can also address a lot of the issues like climate change.
21% of the world's fresh surface water supply touches Michigan shores, and we need to protect it at all costs. People deserve access to clean water, to clean air. PFAS is a forever chemical. You can't negotiate with something like that. It gets into your groundwater and it's polluting. I wrote an op-ed that I invite all of you to read that's in the Flint Courier. It was also published in the Detroit News about the Flint water crisis and the fact that that community still has not been paid, and that there's over $46 million sitting in an interest-bearing account for the money that hasn't been paid. And when we think about this, unless we actually make, and to Nasser's point, hold polluters accountable, they'll continue to pollute, particularly if there's a profit motive behind it. And also government officials. The fact that we have not prosecuted the individuals responsible for the Flint water crisis, and you're talking about people who died here from Legionnaire's disease, people who died, and people who were responsible for that crisis not being prosecuted, again, makes communities, particularly people from poorest communities that get hit the worst with environmental injustice, say nobody cares about us and nobody's representing our interest. And so we just had a boil water advisory in Muskegon Heights. We know there are problems in Benton Harbor. We know every time there is some type of outside official that takes over a city or a town because they claim the folks who live there can't handle it, whether it's Flint or Benton Harbor or Highland Park or wherever, city managers come in the pocket of the polluter. What happens, and is anybody held accountable? Folks are watching, and they see the fact that you've made this community wait 10 years plus for any type of compensation that was already way too low for that number of people that were poisoned. And we're allowing it to continue. Come on. I mean, come on, everybody. You see it. And I'm going to fight like hell to make sure that our groundwater, our waterways, our lakes, our rivers are kept clean. We got to deal with plastics, microplastics. I mean, there's so many things that 2 minutes can't handle, but environmental justice is one of my major issues.
Thank you. Kathy?
Well, I want to echo what Teresa said. This was great. It was really nice to meet virtually you, Nasser, and Hill. It's always good to see you again. It's a pleasure. I've heard you talk many times before, and it was still informative and a pleasure. I do have a question. So one of the issues that I find complex and would love both of your takes on is the uncommitted movement. That is, on one side, there are folks trying desperately to communicate to Biden, to Washington, to be heard around Gaza and what is going on there. On the other side, there are folks who are really, really concerned that we not damage the Biden presidency and candidacy in any way, because the alternative is so horrific. And so I would like your thoughts and inputs, because I'm wrestling with it. I see both sides, and I would love to have your takes on this issue.
Who would you like to start?
I think Hill went second on the last question. So Hill, why don't you begin?
Sure. So I had a meeting in Osama Simblani's office, who runs the Arab American News, with a number of leaders from the Arab and Muslim community, and really wanted to listen and understand this. One of the big challenges that the Democratic Party has is that we have year after year shown up in communities, asked for people's vote, and then not delivered for them when it mattered.
Yeah.
It's happened in the Black community, and it's happened in the Arab and Muslim community, particularly around this issue. And folks are rightly upset and rightly pissed off. And Kathy, I actually asked that same question you had, because I wanted to really understand. And one of the people at the meeting, I said, I'm going to use his name. Trump is a Muslim ban. And the guy literally said to me, you have to understand some people in our culture. I said, that's why I'm here. I want to understand. He said, some people would rather get stabbed in the face than stabbed in the back. And they feel very clearly that the leadership, now remember, think about this. Senator Peters won in large part because of the Black, Arab, and Muslim vote in this last cycle, and came, saying we've got to turn out. President Biden won because of the African-American Muslim vote in this state. People know this across the state. They say, listen, Michigan's a red state until Black people vote, right? But you can't keep asking for people's vote and then not delivering for them. It doesn't work. And so being able to send a message to say, listen, we're organized and we matter is an important step in doing that. And that's what they did. And that's important.
Kathy, first of all, my campaign manager was one of the leaders of the Uncommitted campaign. Uncommitted was initially started to send a message to Joe Biden that if you support genocide, we're not going to support you. We're not going to stand with you. We have a voice. We make a difference. President Biden, I'm going to give you the hard truth. I think that President Biden has lost Michigan because there's a lot of people who were personally affected, and his continued support for Israel and the genocide that's happening today. A lot of people will not vote for Joe Biden and those are Democrats. The problem we have right now is we have a choice on the presidential level. Pick your poison. Which poison would you rather take? Because, Hill is absolutely right. Donald Trump issued a Muslim ban, but Joe Biden's responsible for the death of 45,000 men, women, and children, civilians in Gaza. And he continues to fund the weapons that are continuing to kill the people. So unless a miracle happens, I'm not optimistic on people going out and voting for Joe Biden from the Arab and Muslim community here in Michigan. And I've said that and I've stated it publicly. And I've said, the best thing the Democrats can do, because anybody that runs against Donald Trump would beat him. But unfortunately, I don't think Joe Biden is going to be able to do so unless something drastic happens with his policy in the Middle East.
I have a different view there. I believe we can win in November if we have the right people on the November ticket. And those are people at the top of that ticket that reinforce the values of the people that have been felt disregarded. And I believe and at the end of the day, you have RFK Jr. on the ballot. He's going to take away a certain number of votes. Obviously, you need folks that are going to turn out the African-American community in big numbers. I believe I'm that candidate to do that. And you need people that have respected and want to advocate for the Arab and Muslim community without question.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I have strong ties with the Arab Muslim community here in Washtenaw County. And one of the things I've heard just what you both are saying. I've heard the anguish. I've heard the anger, and I've heard the desire to be heard. But I've also heard, in terms of the uncommitted movement, there are folks going to the national convention under the banner of the uncommitted movement. It's wasn't just the primary, which, and they're still trying to be heard and have influence. But I also heard from those folks that they will campaign for Biden. And because Trump is so much worse. But it is hard. I really think this is something that we in Washtenaw County, we across Michigan need to listen to what people are saying. And that it is hard to be heard unless you have money. I agree with everything that's been said around that. I am really upset with the fact that Elisa Slotkin is not here, even though we had a great discussion, because that is an insult to us as Democrats and to us who believe in democracy. I have, in all honesty, been disappointed with some of our Democrats, people who call themselves Democrats lately. But my values are still there. That's why I'm a Democrat, not because I like the color blue better, though I do. But I'm a Democrat, and I've said this before, because of the values that I have and which party most closely aligns with them. And I'm scared for our democracy if Trump wins. So I urge everybody in the Black and brown communities, Democrats, we have to fight. If you don't want to fight for Biden, fight against Trump. That's how I look at it. But I really, really appreciate your thoughts and views, because you're kind of where I'm at, but I believe in listening to people and learning. So thank you very much, both of you, on that.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you. So now I think we're going to move to closing statements. So each candidate has 3 minutes. Nasser began with the opening statement. So Hill, I'll let you begin the closing statements.
Sure. You know, the first 3 words of the Michigan Constitution and the U.S. Constitution are exactly the same: we the people. It doesn't start with we the super PAC, we the politician, we the political party. It starts with we the people. And I think that this whole discussion we've had, people aren't being put first. We've gotten so far away from we the people, and people have to sit in these seats. Not career politicians, not folks and it's not to begrudge anybody. Let's be clear. It's not to begrudge anybody who has chosen a life to stay in government their entire life. Nothing wrong with that. But that can't be all the people that make up our U.S. Senate. And so what does that mean? Diversity matters, representation matters, and I'm not just talking about racial diversity. And yes, there's only been 12 Black senators in the history of this country. There's been a higher percentage of Black presidents than Black senators in this country. Even if we had 12 right now, the Black community would still be underrepresented in the Senate. There's only been 12 in history. There's never been an African-American senator from Michigan. But I'm not just talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that if I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, I'd be the only active union member in the United States Senate. We're already down to 6% union membership in the private sector. We have to pass the PRO Act and undergird and support our unions. We have to get that done. We got to get the National Labor Relations Board real teeth, OSHA real teeth. And if someone from a union is not at that table fighting for that, it's not going to happen. If I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, as I said before, I'd be only one of 2 U.S. senators with an elementary age child. If we're going to, the issues dealing with children today and parents, moms, dads today with young children is different than it used to be. And if we just have folks that represent a different, complete generation, they don't know what's happening in schools today, and they don't know how to fight for that. If I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, I'd be one of very few small business owners in the United States Senate. You know, small business is the engine of every neighborhood's economy, and we have to fight for our small businesses and fight for living wage. I was a national ambassador for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights Under Law, which fights for voting rights, and we have to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights and Advancement Act. We have to get that done and stop the gerrymandering. You know, these big tentpole things only get done if we end the filibuster. And our opponent in this race, who's not here, talks about reform the filibuster. I don't know what even that means. We have to end it. It seems the other side's always be very clear about what they want to do. Why can't we be very clear about what we want to do and how we're going to do it? We have to codify women's reproductive health, to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights and Advancement Act, to pass the PRO Act, to pass universal health care and mental health care. The filibuster has to go, and we have to end Citizens United and get money out of politics. Many people believe that the response to the Obama presidency was the Tea Party. I believe the response was Citizens United with unfettered, unlimited dark money in politics. And that must end, and I will fight to end it. And I hope to earn your vote and encourage other Michiganders to support me so there is a Biden-Harris-Harper ticket in November, and we can deliver a victory. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Nasser, go ahead.
Thank you. Our government has been hijacked. Special interests, corporate interests, money. It's, the amount of money, as somebody who has never run for political office, the amount of money that it takes to run for office is just ridiculous. You know, I tell my friends, I spend my day begging. I never even asked my father for $1, yet I'm asking people to fund my campaign. Elisa Slotkin has raised millions and millions of dollars, and most of that money has come from corporate interests, PACs, Wall Street. I'm running a campaign where I want my vote, my representation to be that of the people of Michigan. And I will fight for the people of Michigan. As a person who is a Michiganian, who spent most of his life here, whose father was a proud member of the UAW, who's a small business owner, who's a product of a public education, I know what's important, what society needs to succeed. And I feel that the government has failed us. Congress has failed us. Our senators have failed us. Hill was mentioned Gary Peters. Gary Peters won by 60,000 votes. To this day, Gary Peters has not called for a ceasefire in Gaza because he's too afraid of the pro-Israel lobby. When money basically overpowers or vetoes your morality or humanity, you know we have something wrong in our system. I know that Gary Peters is a good guy, but how he could stay silent on a genocide, I don't know. And I can't figure that out. And that's why I call myself the I don't give a damn candidate. Because I'm going to say what's on my mind, whether it wins me votes or loses votes. And like I said before, I am not looking for political office. I am a reluctant candidate, but I'm going to make a political difference. And if I'm elected to the U.S. Senate, I guarantee you I'm not going to be a career politician. I'm not going to have my aides roll me in and have to change my diapers before I leave the Senate. I'm going to go in there to make a difference, work for the American people, be a citizen leader. My leadership is temporary, but my citizenship will last forever. And thank you for giving us the opportunity, both Hill and I, to come and speak to you, because I think that is the fundamental foundation of democracy. Be able to talk to the people of Michigan and let them choose and not let the Democratic establishment pick the candidate for us.
Thank you so much. We really appreciated hearing from both of you. It was very meaningful, I know for me, but I'm sure for everyone else. I wanted to let everyone know that this recorded forum will be on the Washtenaw Dems website and our YouTube channel. So I do encourage you, everyone, to share it once it's posted, because I think these were some very important conversations that needed to be had. So thank you again. We appreciate you coming here. I know the Washtenaw Dems are very grateful. Thank you.